Okay, today we're starting trigonometry, which is mainly to do with the triangles. But later on, we're going to see some questions where we don't get asked to exactly define these types of angles, but you need to know that they occur so that you can do the working out. So what I mean by if you have parallel lines, we need to remember, so if you've got two lines and then you have a line that intersects it, so it cuts through it, then these angles here on the zigzag are the same. So what we're saying is if that was 20 degrees, that one would be 20 degrees there. Now the next one, if you look down here, they say that the co-interior, these make up to 180. So if I look up at that example before, if I said that one was 20, then this one has to be 160 so that it would make up 180 because it's the rule there is 180. So you're going to remember things like that. Other things to remember is if you have a full circle, that obviously all those angles are going to add up to 360. And then you can have corresponding angles. So if you see here, the angle's in the same spot in the pattern. So if you've got parallel lines like that, and then you cut down, we've got the lines. So the angle in the same spot is equal to each other as well. All right, and then we also have vertically opposite, they equal each other. So if that was, say, 30 degrees, then this would be 30 degrees. Now we know that this has to make a full circle of 360. So if we minus 60, we've got 300 left. So we know that that would be 150, 150. So you might get drawn on to know a few of those things later on, but just so you can remember, pop them in there. But what we're mainly doing with trigonometry is looking at triangles. And the first first rules we're going to look at is Sohcahtoa. Now Sohcahtoa, you need to make a note, can only be used on right angled triangles. So only use these rules on right angled triangles. So that's when we know that it has that right hand 90 degrees there. All right, so when we do use these rules, we need to label up the sides. So the first side we're going to look at is this hypotenuse side. Now the hypotenuse side is always opposite the 90 degrees. Okay, so it's always opposite, so you might write that opposite the 90 degree angle. Okay, now the other two sides will be labelled on according to what other angle we're talking about. So if you have a look here, they're using this angle down here. So if you've got that, then what they call the one opposite they're talking about is called the opposite. And then if it's next to it, it's called the adjacent. So very important to be labelling up your triangles. So say, for example, I draw another right angled triangle and I might say that this is the angle we're talking about. Well, first, this would be my hypotenuse. Now this one, if I go over there, that would be opposite the angle. So that one's opposite and the one next to it is adjacent. Okay, so we need to learn them out, and then we also need to learn these Sohcahtoa rules. So the SO actually stands for that sine, and we say angle equals opposite over hypotenuse. So you can see the first one is the one that goes on the top, and the second one is the one on the bottom of the fraction. So then we can see that if we look at the car part, that's helping us to remind that cosine angle equals adjacent over a hypotenuse. And the last one, TOA, helps us to recall that tan angle equals O over A. Okay, so sometimes it's easy just to write Sohcahtoa on the top of your paper, and so that you make sure you write out the rule correctly. Okay, so we've done this before, Sohcahtoa, in other previous years, but we're going to go over it and make sure we know. So as I said before, sometimes it's easier if we write Sohcahtoa on the top to make sure we write the right thing. So they're asking me in this question to find the value of x. So I can see x is here. So your first step should always be to label up your triangle. So I always like to label the hypotenuse first. So I've got the hypotenuse. And then because they're giving me this angle here, I'm going to say that x is the opposite, and I'm only just going to leave it like that. So I've got O and H because they're the things that they've given me, even though I don't know X. Now if you have a look, I go, all right, I've got H and O. So I go up here and look at the rule that has O and H. So it's sine. So I know that I'll be using the sine rule. So I'm going to write the rule out. Sine angle equals O over H. My next step is to substitute in all the things I know. So I know that it is actually, the angle is 29.6 degrees. And I know that the opposite is x and the hypotenuse is 80. Okay, once you've substituted that all in, then you can just simply use your calculator if you like. And what you're going to do here, you can still use your solve function, and you can type this all into the calculator and go comma x. Now when we're doing questions like this in so we'll just do that solve comma x and we'll get that answer. I'll do that for you on the calc and have a look. Okay, here I've done it on the calculator, so I've done the solve, and if you can't remember that's menu 3.1 on our calculator to get solve. The sign button's found under the TRIG. There's a button called TRIG, just TRIG, and you'll be able to get the sign there. Now, another really important thing is that your calculator is on degrees. That's found in the settings. If yours is not saying that, when we jump online or come on and ask me, and I'll show you online on my screen how to get your calculator on that degrees. Okay, so when we type that in, now you can see I've typed exactly what I wrote out, comma x, and I've found out that x is equal, now I'm coming up here and checking, it's saying 2 decimal places. So I look at the third, and because it's a 5, that means I'd have to round up. So it'd be 5.2 centimeters, and I'll put a box around my answer. Okay, for example 2, it's asked me to find the length of the hypotenuse correct to 2 decimal places. So first of all, let's go find the hypotenuse, and that's the one we want to know. And I'll label up my triangle. And here's my angle, so I've actually got the adjacent. So the rule that has A and H is the car. So I'm going to use cos. So cos angle equals A over H. Then I'll substitute everything in, which is 10 over x, and then I can use the solve function and type that all out on my calculator and get the answer, which I've done on the calculator, and I've got to 2 decimal places, I get x to equal 10.35 centimeters. Now, because this is the hypotenuse, this should be the biggest side of a right angle triangle. So I just went to check, and it is bigger than 10, so I'm hoping that's the correct answer, which it is. So just be careful. That's a good way to check your work. Now, with this final question, when they ask for the magnitude, that's just the word they use when you want to find the angle size. So it's like the size of the angle. We don't say, apparently, it's probably not correct English to say the size of the angle. You should say the magnitude of the angle. But that's all it means. So we're still going to follow the same way. So what we'll do is we'll label up our triangle, And if I look, I've got the opposite side and I've also got the adjacent side. So it means I'm going to use the tan rule. So tan angle equals O over A, and I'm going to substitute in what I know, which is 11 over 3. Now, if you go and pop in solve in your calculator, this is when you're trying to find the angle. So you can see here when I'm trying to find the angle, you're going to get something like this. So you can see I've typed that in and I got this weird little answer here, which will sometimes happen with the angle. So the way when you're trying to find the angle is you're actually going to put an n in front of the solve. So what I've done now is just put n solve. So you do the same and you can see we get the answer. We'll just do the nearest degree for angles. So I'm going to say it's 75 degrees. So the nearest degree, I looked at the first decimal place, it was 7, so I rounded up, and that's 75. Just in your textbook, you're going to get a couple of questions just so you know how to answer. If they ask you to, say, find the value sine 27, as long as your calculator is in degrees over here, all you have to do is use the TRIG button, press sine, and then put 27, press enter. This is because my calculator is on exact, so it just writes it like that again. Remember, control enter will give you a decimal answer, which was here. Okay. In 11C, which you're also going to be working through, when they say find the angle, so if they say sine angle equals this, they want you to find the angle. What you're actually doing is you need to use the inverse or the opposite function to sine, which is that sine -1, and you type that in like that and press enter, and you can see we get what the actual angle is. So the angle for this one is actually, I'm going to round to the nearest degree, so 29 degrees. This sine, inverse sine, it's still found under the TRIG button. So you'll see like you have sine and then underneath it is inverse sine. So you just need to click for that one. Any problems that you have with your calculator, jump online and talk to me and I'll show you through my calculator app on the laptop.